Sheila's fingers trembled as she adjusted the 4-drip. The clean hospital room filled with faint beeps from machinery. Luna lay motionless on the bed, her chest rising and falling in time with the ventilator. The coma had lasted weeks, with each day blending into the next in an endless procession of uncertainty. Sheila, a nurse with 10 years of experience, has seen patients pass away, but Luna was different. Her face, however pale and thin, had a quiet tenacity, as if she were striving to return from wherever her mind had gone. Lee stood near the window, his figure contrasting sharply with the gray morning light. He was a man of precision, a neurologist who valued statistics over emotion, but even he couldn't conceal the tension in his jaw. "She's stable," he murmured without glancing around. "Brain activity is not consistent, but there is something there. She's not gone." Sheila nodded, not knowing if he was convincing her or himself. They had grown closer over the months, united by their mutual vigil for Luna. She was their patient, but she had evolved into something more. A mystery, a duty, and a quiet promise. They had thoroughly examined her file, her background, and her life before to the accident. Luna had been a writer, fiercely independent, with no family to support her. For the first week, the hospital records classified her as Jane Doe, until a coworker identified her. No one else arrived. Nobody else cared. "We can't keep calling her Luna," Sheila interrupted the silence. Her voice was faint, but it had weight, which caused Lee to turn. "It has been too long." Lee scowled, his black eyebrows narrowed. "She's not the same person anymore." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we're not sure who she'll be when she wakes up. If she awakens. The scans indicate harm to her memory and personality, which may need to be rewritten." Sheila fidgeted with her scrubs. "We need to plan for that. We need to give her something to hold on to." Lee crossed his arms, dubious yet attentive. "Do you want to rename her? As if she were a stray dog." Sheila bristled, but her tone remained calm. "Do not rename her. Give her a fresh start. A new identity. Something that does not connect her to a history she may not recall. Something that allows her to be someone else." Lee looked at her, then at Luna. The space felt smaller, and the air was heavier. "So what do you propose? We merely choose a name from a hat?" "Leslie," Sheila said without hesitation. The name slid out unexpectedly, like if it had been waiting. "It's strong and uncomplicated." "It suits her," Lee said, raising an eyebrow. "Leslie? Why Leslie?" Sheila shrugged, a small flush spreading up her neck. "This was my grandmother's name. She was a fighter. Most individuals would not have survived what I went through." Lee did not immediately respond. He approached Luna's bedside, analyzing her expression as if looking for confirmation that she approved. The machines resumed their steady cadence, oblivious to the discourse. Finally he exhaled. "Fine. Leslie. But this isn't just a name, Sheila. If we accomplish this, we will create a person. A lifetime. Are you prepared for that?" Sheila returned his look, her determination tightening. "Are you?" The decision to call her Leslie represented a turning point, a line crossed. It was more than simply a name. It was about accepting ownership and responsibility for someone who couldn't speak for themselves. Sheila and Lee began to create Leslie's world in the quiet periods between shifts. They started modest and practical. A new medical document called Leslie Carter. A fictitious history. 32-year-old freelance graphic designer with no near family. They chose facts that were believable and grounded, but not so explicit as to raise doubts. Leslie enjoyed coffee, preferred rainy days, and had a fictitious cat named Jasper who brought her comfort. Sheila took the initiative, using her imagination to fill in the gaps. She wrote notes in Leslie's chart, not just medical updates, but fragments of a life. Patient expresses fondness for jazz music. Patient reports a dislike for crowded places. Lee was more reserved, focusing on the science, monitoring Luna's brain waves, adjusting medications, and tracking subtle changes in her condition. Even he couldn't resist adding to the story. One evening he snuck a tidbit into the chart. Patient has a background in watercolor painting. Sheila smiled as she read it. "I didn't realize you were an artist, Lee." "I'm not," he responded, a rare grin pulling on his lips. "But it matches her." They didn't explain why they were doing this. "Not really." On the surface, it was for Leslie's benefit, to give her something to hold on to when she awoke, a framework to reconstruct herself. But it was really for them. Sheila, who had lost her own family at a young age and felt the weight of their absence, saw Leslie as an opportunity to care for someone without the load of history. Lee, whose life had been a succession of calculated risks, discovered in Leslie a conundrum that he couldn't answer with data alone. Together they were creating a person, a purpose, and a cause to return to this room. Weeks became months. Leslie's condition improved, but slowly. Her fingers twitched one day, causing Sheila's heart to race. Another day, her eyelids flickered but did not open. Lee spent hours examining EEGs, looking for patterns that could predict when, or if, she would awaken. He didn't say anything, but Sheila could see the doubt creeping in. She felt it as well, but she pushed it down in favor of Leslie's story. She purchased a tiny notebook and began writing letters to Leslie about things she might like to know about herself. "You're brave," someone began. "You don't allow others push you about. You enjoy the fragrance of rain and the sound of a saxophone at midnight." One night, Sheila read a letter aloud, barely above a whisper. Lee was there, taking vital signs, but he halted to listen. When she finished, he did not look at her. "You're good at this," he stated calmly, making her reel. The consequences were disastrous. The weakening left wing split off, sending metal pieces flying. The fuselage separated toward the back, and flames erupted within the cabin. Steffi's world was a whirl of heat, noise, and misery. She clutched to Aspen and Hayes, protecting them with her body as debris showered down. The jet eventually came to a halt, its front end smashed against a concrete barrier. Silence ensued, interrupted only by the crackle of flames and the distant wail of emergency sirens. Steffi's head throbbed and her vision blurred. She felt blood pouring down her temple, but she was still alive. She undid her seatbelt and checked her children. Aspen remained aware, her face drenched with tears but unhurt. Hayes was limp, his little chest rising and falling slightly. Steffi felt a wave of panic as she checked his pulse, weak but there. "Clara!" Steffi called, her voice husky. She turned to face the nanny, but Clara was slumped in her seat, her head at an unusual angle. Steffi reached for her, gently shaking her, but she did not respond. Her heart fell when she noticed Clara's chest was quiet and her eyes were unseeing. Grief hit her like a tidal wave, with little time to process it. The fire was growing, and the heat was intolerable. "Lila!" Steffi exclaimed, searching for the flight attendant. Lila struggled to her feet, blood streaming from a gash in her forehead. "We need to get out," Steffi cried, unbuckling Aspen and taking Hayes into her arms. Lila nodded and staggered toward the emergency exit. Lila flung her weight against the stuck door, and it gave way with a groan. Fresh air surged in and mixed with the stifling smoke. Steffi carried Hayes and guided Aspen with her free hand. Lila guided them through the debris-strewn cabin to the exit. Steffi sent Aspen down first, watching as she safely landed on the tarmac below. She followed, gripping Hayes, whose breathing became shallower. Lila came last, falling as soon as she touched the ground. Emergency responders were already on the scene, their yells cutting through the haze. Paramedics rushed to approach Steffi and removed Hayes from her arms. "He's not breathing properly," she yelled, her voice breaking. They placed him on a stretcher and began CPR immediately. Aspen grabbed to Steffi's leg, weeping. Steffi's gaze shifted back to the blazing wreckage, where Clara's body lay. She wanted to go back and save her, but the flames were too hot, pushing everyone back. The paramedics worked frantically on Hayes, their expressions gloomy. Steffi stood paralyzed, her hand holding Aspen's, watching them fight to save her son. Minutes passed, each one lasting an eternity. Finally, one of the paramedics looked up, his face filled with defeat. "I'm sorry," he stated softly. "We did everything we could." Steffi's knees buckled. She let forth a deep and primal scream. Aspen cried beside her, knowing the loss but not completely comprehending it. Hayes, her lively and inquisitive 3-year-old, was gone. The world appeared to collapse in on itself, with the flames and sirens receding to a muffled roar. Steffi collapsed to the ground, hugging Aspen, her body heaving with sobbing. The aftermath was a haze. Steffi and Aspen were transported to a neighboring hospital, where Steffi received treatment for a concussion and mild burns. Fortunately, Aspen only suffered scrapes. The news of the crash circulated swiftly and dominated headlines. Forrester Creations released a statement expressing condolences and pledging assistance for the investigation. Steffi's family descended in San Francisco: Ridge, Taylor, Thomas, her grandparents Eric and Stephanie, all devastated by the loss of Hayes and Clara. The National Transportation Safety Board opened an inquiry, focused on the left engine, which showed indicators of catastrophic failure. Early findings indicated a manufacturing flaw in a turbine blade, albeit the precise cause would take months to determine. The fire quickly spread due to a burst gasoline line, overpowering the jet's safety systems. Captain Pierce and First Officer Chun had survived, but both were hospitalized with serious injuries. Lila too would recover, while carrying the agony of the day. Steffi stayed in the hospital for 2 days, and her body healed faster than her heart. She repeated the entire flight, the shaking, the smoke, the flames, the instant she realized Clara was gone, the second she knew Hayes would not make it. Guilt bit at her. Why did she bring them on this trip? Why didn't she insist on a commercial flight? The questions were never ending, with each one twisting the knife deeper. Aspen, who was too little to really grasp the loss, was continually asking about Hayes. "When is he coming back, Mommy?" she said, her eyes searching Steffi's for answers that did not exist. Steffi hugged her daughter tightly, trying to find words that wouldn't tear her further. Hayes and Clara's funeral was placed a week later in Los Angeles. The Forrester family, surrounded by friends, co-workers, and journalists, wept together. Steffi stood at the podium, her voice quivering as she described her son's contagious giggle, his love of dinosaurs, and how he'd curl up in her lap after a hard day. She described Clara's warmth, unwavering loyalty, and role as a second mother to the children. The atmosphere was weighted with grief from the loss of 2 lives too soon. Steffi went away from Forrester Creations in the weeks that followed, leaving Thomas in charge of the company. She concentrated on Aspen and enrolled her in therapy to help her deal with the trauma. She went to bereavement therapy, even though the pain felt like a permanent fixture, a shadow that trailed her everywhere. The media frenzy ultimately subsided, but the public's interest remained, spurred by Steffi's celebrity and the tragedy's dramatic nature. The investigation continued, with experts searching the wreckage for clues. Steffi obsessively watched the developments, desperate to figure out why her kid had disappeared. When the preliminary study verified the turbine blade issue, she turned her grief into action, meeting with aviation safety groups to demand stronger rules. She couldn't bring Hayes or Clara back, but she could try to keep another family from going through this grief. Months passed and Steffi started to rebuild. She returned to Forrester Creations, her love of design providing a small lifeline. Aspen resumed school, her humor gradually returning, but her eyes retained a calm sadness. Steffi found peace in little rituals like lighting a candle for Hayes every night and keeping Clara's favorite scarf on her dresser. The scars from that day would never go away, but Steffi learned to live with them, for the daughter she still had, and for the legacy she would leave in her son's memory. The Forrester jet disaster was a tragedy that impacted people's lives, serving as a sobering reminder of how rapidly things can change. Steffi saw it as a never-ending wound, as well as a call to resilience. "I found something," she explained. "A book is in the library. It had a name, Luna. Felt familiar. Like it was mine." Sheila's heart fell. She saw Lee at the hospital, their old meeting site, and told him everything. "She's starting to remember," she remarked. "Or she's starting to get it. We can't keep her in the dark forever." Lee scratched his temples, tired. "What should we tell her? Did we make her up? That her real name is Luna, and we deleted her because we believed it would be better?" "I don't know," Sheila said. "But she deserves the truth. Or as much of it as we can offer her." They agreed to inform her, but not yet. They would wait and watch, allowing her to exist as Leslie for a little longer. They owed her that, the opportunity to be the person they had made, the person she was growing into. But the truth was unavoidable, just like the rain Leslie loved. And so they waited, their creature strolling through the world they had created, which was both a gift and a falsehood. Leslie Carter, born from a coma, continued on, unconscious of the woman she had once been, and who she might never be again. The bold and the beautiful spoilers for Friday, August 8th, suggest that Liam Spencer and Hope Logan will be furious about the cancer deception, while Sheila Sharp discovers Lee Finnegan is hiding Luna Nozawa. At the Spencer estate, John Finnegan had just arrived with Grace Buckingham and ordered her to tell Liam the truth about his brain cancer. That left Liam and Hope looking concerned about whatever Grace had to say. Hope and Liam's thoughts are undoubtedly turning to the worst-case scenario right now. There's a high probability Liam and Hope feel he's had a setback in his recuperation, but Grace will tell him that everything is great. The actual issue is that Liam never truly had a brain tumor at all. Grace will admit she fabricated the scans and prescribed the drug that caused Liam's symptoms. When Liam and Hope realize Grace has been operating a fraud, they will undoubtedly question why. None of this will make sense to Hope or Liam, but Grace will tell them the same sob story she told Finn. Grace will share updates on her daughter's threats and explain how it all relates back to Reese Buckingham's gambling debts. Although Grace would continue to explain that she had no choice, Hope may angrily disagree and scold her for lying to everyone. Of course, Liam will have a chance to respond to Grace's behavior. Bill Spencer paid $1 million for Liam's experimental operation, but Liam will discover that it was all part of Grace's complex plan. Liam will lash out at what Grace put him through, especially since Beth Spencer and Kelly Spencer could have been told about his horrible illness and horrified for no reason. On Friday's B&B episode, the wheels will be turning for Sheila, who recently ran into Lee at her office. The contents of Lee's bag flew across the floor, causing Sheila to realize Lee had stolen a large amount of medications from the hospital. Sheila will next put that clue together with the others she has gathered. Lee has refused to tell Sheila what happened to Luna's body, and there is no record of it in the hospital system. Lee's sudden absence will serve as another signal for Sheila, especially because Lee is taking so many medications. Sheila will realize her granddaughter must be alive and in Lee's care someplace, and she may threaten to reveal this information unless Lee takes her to Luna. According to the bold and the beautiful spoilers, Lee will be backed into a corner, so don't miss out on all the drama.